Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Yep, I hope everybody's doing well and have been doing some art. All right. It's very important you set a space that even if you don't have your art materials, you can easily just grab, maybe have this already set up out. So it's easy for you to sit down and do something. Okay. Um, so today we're going to kind of explore watercolors. We've done watercolors, but we're going to explore them a little more with one of the techniques. So we have our simple set, our paper, water, two sets of water, and then let's see what comes up. Okay. So we done wet on wet, right? The paint is wet and the paper is wet. And we done wet on dry, where our brush and paint is wet, right? And then the paper is dry. That's more like the common practice we all do in acrylic or other type of paintings. Watercolor allows you to have the paper wet or the surface absorb the the water in your paint. Okay? So we're going to do a couple of exercises and then a little painting. You could pull it off with one sheet of paper. Okay, I know paper is the hardest thing to come across. It's something we need to acquire. Okay, the paints can last you a long time. The brushes too. Water you could go to get anywhere, but it is the piece of paper that, fortunately and unfortunately, I need you to have access to. Okay, because once you're done with a painting, right, that paper you cannot use it anymore. You need another piece of paper. Um, so let's do some practice. We're gonna do some circles first, and then some other shapes. But we're going to combine, and please hear me out clearly on this. We're going to combine situations where we wet the paper on those shapes. We make the shapes wet and then add the color. And then we're going to have situations where the paper is dry. Okay. Just to have those different effects right next to each other. And on our other side of the sheet of paper, my right, which I'm not going to touch for now, that's the second half. We will do a little painting, kind of following that same approach. Okay, let's start with some circles. I hope everybody's doing good. You're feeling good today. So let's start with getting a color into the paper that is dry. So I get blue, I activate my blue, roll my brush, and we're gonna start with circles, I said. So I see I need more liquid, and look, I make my circle. See? Okay. So I have two brushes, but for this we're gonna have to constantly have to clean up our brush. Okay, I'm gonna work with one, but okay. So follow me here. I'm gonna clean my brush, and this time I'm going to make circles with clean water. Right, my brush is clean. I get water from my other cup, clean water. I'm gonna make circles of wet paper that is circles. Okay, no pigment yet. So look. That right there is a circle of wet paper. So we're gonna do a few of those and leave space. They're gonna be different sizes. So some of them are small, some of them are big. But we're gonna also put color in other circles that the paper won't be wet. But for now, I'm taking my sheet of paper and moving it to see. You see where it shines? As it shines, the shyness tells me that I successfully made a circle. Otherwise, you cannot see it. Okay, we gotta work hard, fast because this dries up. Okay, so now I take my blue and I put it on some of these circles we made. Now we're gonna pick another color, clean our brush, pick another color, maybe green, and put it in those circles. See? I'm just framing the circle round, but if you notice, this is already wet. You see the blue and the green on a wet circle that's already been made. So now I'm gonna just pick my green and on an area that is not wet, that is dry, I made a green circle and a smaller one. See? Now I'm gonna do the same thing with the blue. Clean my brush and just pick blue and on an area that is dry, I made a blue circle. Sorry if it was out of focus. I apologize for that. There you go. This is a little better focus. You see the ones that have the green and the blue mixed are still kind of wet. They still haven't dried, so you can still add color to them. If they're mixing one of the colors more than the other. The idea is that you get a different effect when the paper is wet. I'm adding more blue to some of this. I'm sorry, the camera is not helping. This is focused now. I'm gonna clean my brush. There's a dry brush I have here. Come on. They are focused, but that's the idea, yeah? Let's do some other shapes. This time, we're gonna keep less pigment so we could see the transparency of them, okay? And then we overlap them. So some of those circles or other shapes overlaps on top of each other. So I'm gonna pick yellow, orange, right? But I want to show you here how I'm gonna try to do other different shapes. So I know the camera is not focusing, and I'm really sorry. It's a little frustrating. Um, there you go. So I'm gonna wet the paper in forms of triangles or squares. This one is a triangle. I'm gonna do maybe a square here. If you want to verify that your shape that you're doing is correct, you're gonna have to move the paper into the light to see that it shines. I'm gonna do a circle. Otherwise, it's very hard to know that you did the shape correctly. I'll show you in a moment. So I did a rectangle, sorry, a square, triangle, and a circle. And if I move my paper, excuse me, you can see as I move the paper, the light makes it shine. Okay. My water, if you notice, is a tiny little blue. You don't see it, but it's because of my brush. Although I clean it, there's still a little left over. Okay, I cannot wait too long. You neither can wait too long because then the water dries up on the paper. So let's add some orange in some of this. I said I was going to put less pigment. Now I'm going to add the yellow. So I clean my brush. See how the colors mix because it's wet. So these are shapes that have been done on wet because the paper was wet. Orange and yellow mix. Some of them are lighter, the ones to the left, because I use less pigment. But now I'm gonna try to make other shapes. Maybe a one that's entirely in yellow that kind of overlaps. Now orange, maybe. See? Now let's practice how we do wavy lines and straight lines that are thin and straight lines that become thick, pressing down, and then as you move, you lift your brush and becomes thinner. Because as you're lifting the brush, the line becomes thinner. Press down, move up. The key is mixing these colors when the paper is wet and contrasting it sometimes with some dry wet paint on dry paper. But the emphasis today will be on the putting color. For example, right here, you see that effect. I'm gonna really bring it closer. Um, the effect of the triangle and the circle, orange and yellow, because that circle and that triangle were made first with clean water on the paper. So the paper was wet. So the key here is that you need to kind of know ahead of time what is it that you want to create so you could paint it just on wet water that you cannot see. Okay? So now we're going to move on to our, this was going to be a very simple class today. So I'm going to move now right away to the lesson of today on this side of the paper. Okay? And basically, the flowers that we're going to do, actually let's practice a little more. Let's do some leaves. Watch what I'm trying to say. You could do the leaves, right? Green. This is, my brush is wet and the paper is dry. I press down and I lift the brush as I go up. Look at that leaf. Wet on dry. Because the paint was wet and the paper was dry. Okay? So I'm gonna do a few of those. That's very rich green, so I should light it up. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna light it up. But it's still wet on dry paper. Now that's too dry. Sorry, too light. I'm just shaping the leaf. When you see me moving around, I'm just shaping my leaf, but it's very wet as you can see. Let's try another one. And these are wet again on dry paper. Now I'm gonna do wet on wet. Now this is what I mean by you need to understand and know what is it that you're gonna do or represent beforehand. So I'm gonna clean my brush and I need to know that I'm gonna do leaves because I'm gonna paint them now without seeing them on wet water. Okay? So watch. My brush is clean and I'm gonna paint my leaves and they're wet on the paper is wet. And it's called wet on wet because I haven't put the paint. Well, when I put the paint will be wet and the paper will be wet. Remember? But for now, only we see the paper wet. If you move the paper sheet, where it will show you that it's actually shining. Let's do one more. Okay, so look how it shines next to the green ones. Okay, so now I take my green color and I put it straight into the wet. Look, wet on wet. This one I can barely see, sorry. I cannot see it because the light. So you gotta move your paper as you wish or you know that you need it to move it. They seem a little lighter, but they're made because the paper was wet beforehand. Okay, so knowing that, I'm gonna clean my brush and I'm gonna make the shape of some flowers. This is what, and I apologize, you cannot really see it well. Um, but let me paint one so you see what I'm doing with water. Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna have to paint one with actual color, which is wet on dry. So then you see that I'm gonna replicate that in water first, the same thing that you cannot really see because it's clear water, and I'm gonna go with water. So I chose red this time, but it's like a round cup, but the top is wavy. I think we've done this before. So this exactly that you see red, I'm gonna do it just with water next to it, or under here. It's kind of bigger, and then I add the red. Look, see? So we're basically, all of us, we're going to be drawing a lot of these shapes, different sizes, and then filling them out with color after. Okay. Now we'll combine that with actual flowers that are gonna be wet on dry straight. So basically we're gonna do this that we see here happening. This will dry eventually and won't look shiny like this. Okay, look how these other things dry over here. See how that dried up? So this will dry it up and look a little different. The gradation of the color. Okay, so just like we did the shapes here, what's gonna basically happen? Remember all these circles? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These circles here that we did first in clear water, we couldn't see, and then we added the color. That's exactly what we're gonna do with this shape in different sizes of flowers, and then we'll fill the color in, gradating it like this, and then we'll do some flowers where we'll go straight wet on dry paper. The paper would not be wet first for the other set, and then it'll be a combination of these two. Okay, the key here is the two different effects and the fact that they are different sizes. So I'm going to start with the wet that you cannot see. Okay, that's why I made this first, so you can see the shape that we're doing it on. So just clean water. You use the light to be able to see the shininess of what you're doing. This one is smaller. Even smaller here. I got 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, let's start putting color and I'll use very light red because what happens is we can't wait too long because the paper absorbs the paper will absorb the water we put in. Okay, if you notice, sometimes I grab red, sometimes I don't, and when I don't, like this one right here, it becomes lighter. See, I didn't went to grab more red, so then the next flower becomes very light, and then all these flowers in which I did not went to grab red are lighter than the others. For some, I will grab more red to add in certain areas, like here at the bottom, you know. Okay, so we have 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I thought we did more, but they already dried up. That's the problem. I cannot see them because they already dried up, but we did more. We did one here, and I think we did one more over maybe somewhere here, but I'll do 3 more. So a little one here. Okay. You see how some are lighter than the others? That's the amount of red I put on them. So be careful with that. If you're gonna add more red, add it in some areas. Here I'm adding them just at the bottom. And we could always fix this as we go. Okay. So now, you see how some of them are lighter? Now I take red, light up red, and this time it's gonna be wet on dry because now the flower I put down is gonna be on dry paper. Ready? So in this spot is the paper is dry. So my flower will look different. You'll see when it dries. So that's one. Remember to try to keep them in different sizes. Look how small this one is. Two, three. This is wet on dry. Four and five. Okay. Maybe I could add. I clean my brush and I add not in all of them, just in some of them, a tiny little touch of orange. Very light. Okay. Has to be light. We don't want to emphasize it too much. Maybe lighter than that. If you notice, I'm putting it somewhere red is already there. So then the orange kind of camouflage with the red. Where in the flower is already kind of reddish. And that's where I add the orange. And just in some of them, and that's it. Just a little extra touch to give volume to the work. Okay. So now we take and clean our brush and take green with the brush, but again, this has to be done very lightly, meaning our green will have a lot of water. Let's see how it goes. We go from the bottom down here up and try to reach one flower. That was very light, okay? But it's good to test. I add more green. It's better safe than, now this one is going to be, you see, a little light, darker. And I kind of like that because that means not all the stems are going to be the same. I don't want them to be the same. So this one maybe lighter. See? This one darker. Coming from this one darker. Now I want to make some really light. If it touches the flower, it will get into the flower like this one. That was a little, not mistake, but you see that darkness there? Is the green that touched the wetness of the flower, so it's okay. I'm being very gentle, but they all get a stem. But I wanted to emphasize how some of them, the green is lighter than in others. You see how there's different greens? That's something you have to control with the water. Sorry, the amount of green that you put into the water. So this one I'll fix just by putting red on that dark spot. So then instead of dark, um, just making it dark because it's dark, then that this dark is because it's red. Okay, I'm just adding red in some of them. If it's too dry, the red, I just add some water. Be gentle, control your amount of water, and please make that combination of the flowers that we did prepare the paper by being wet and then adding the color to that wet area, and then the ones that we just did um, by putting wet paint on dry paper. So for example, I'm going to highlight this because you can actually tell very clearly with the pencil. I'm going to point it out. This one, and I'll wait for the camera to focus. This one, the paint went straight into dry paper. Okay. This one, we paint, we put water in this shape, clear water, and then we added the color, and it diffused like that. Okay. Same thing with this one. Same thing with this one. Same thing with most of this. But I believe this one, right? This one was paint straight, wet on dry. While this one was painted wet first and then add the color on top of the paper. The green steams of the flowers were different. Purposely, I acknowledge, and you should work on this, acknowledging how much green your brush has compared to the water, and then you make the stems, and you know that they're going to come out in different tones of greens because you know that sometimes you add more green to it and sometimes you add more water to it. So that's something you have to practice and take control of. Basically, keep practicing these same flowers, do them a couple of times. But if I were a teacher and this will be your homework, let me wait for it to focus. Sorry. If I were a teacher and this were your homework, I wouldn't want to see the stems all in the same green tone. I would like to see like this here. Some are lighter, some are darker. Not darker, some are richer. Basically, it's that it has more rich green, while others have more lighter, more water. So if I were giving my students this as homework, I would like to see their work back and witness that these have different tones. So if your green is all the same, you're not controlling how much water you're putting on each one of the brush strokes. So clean your brush, do one, clean your brush, add a little bit of green, do another one. Don't clean your brush, just rub it off, add water to it a little bit, and do another one, and you'll see that it will become lighter because it will have less pigment. Okay? Then do another one. It will have less pigment because every time you pass it down, you're getting rid of the pigment. So the second time it will be lighter. Now this time clean your brush, get more green. If it's too rich, put it down and it will be a rich green. So I want you to control and be aware every time you hold your brush what's in it. What's on your brush as you're putting it down. You should not be oblivious or not knowing what is it that you're, oh, I grab red, let me just put red. No. Yes, you grab red, but how much quantity of water in your brush there is compared to the red that's on your brush, meaning pigment. If I go here, this is what I'm trying to say. I'm gonna grab the red, look. I put it down. See how rich, right? So I know that the next time will be probably the same. So now what do? Kind of clean my brush a little, just a little, put it down. Look how it's lighter. Because I did not went to grab pigment. I just grabbed water. I put it down again. Less pigment. Third one, third time. 1, 2, 3. Less pigment. I want more pigment. I grab it. I want less pigment. I could grab it, but put it down somewhere here. Mix it with water. Make it less bright. Clean my brush. Clean my brush really well and still put it down. It may still have a little bit of red. No, okay, I may grab from this one. I'm playing with red, but I'm aware of how much pigment I put down. I grab water. I grab water. Less pigment. Okay. I want you to just control your colors. And you can control them by the amount of water that goes in the paper. So look how beautiful this right here is. You could probably cut it. Oops, right there. Um, we could obviously do some bigger leaves. Again, different tones of greens. Let's see how that works. So if that's that green, maybe I'll put it here too. And here. But now I clean my brush. And I know I'm going to have less pigment now. Look, yep. How did I know that? How did I know it's going to come out less green? Because I knew how much water I added to my brush. I'm not doing too many leaves, okay? If you need to add green, then you add green. That's it. That's the right amount of leaves. And this is our painting here. I could actually cut this here and cut this here. And look. To get to this, you have to practice and play around with, okay, am I going to wet the paper before I put my color? Yes. Am I going to not wet the paper and go straight with paint on dry paper? Okay, that's a different effect. Now, how much red am I going to put on the on my brush as I paint to have different tones? You see, the magic here is that even though it's the same red, there's different tonalities of red because it's created by the amount of water and the little orange that we added to, that little orange, you can also see it there. Okay. So here's wet on wet, sorry, wet on dry. Remember, I did these ones first, going straight wet on the dry paper, and I did this one where we wet the paper. Sorry, the wet is the brush, the paint on dry paper. The wet is the brush on wet paper, because the paper here was wet as this shape. And look how they're different. You could probably don't tell much the difference, but there's a difference because this one down here got the color got diffused on the paper more. This is more solid. This is more diffuse. And that's exactly what happened to some of these flowers. Okay, so we go from the bottom, the green of the stems, slowly going up, showing you the different flowers. All right, I hope you enjoy it. Um, keep practicing. Okay, keep painting a little. If I were you, I would do this part again a couple of times, or make it richer, make it bigger. So you do this and then add more to the side and then add more to the other side on a new piece of paper, and you have more flowers. But you're actually in a way practicing more. Okay. So I hope to see all of you very soon. Stay safe and healthy. Have a great week.